I want to ask you, I feel like you have such a social media presence, and you also run a social media company as well. And I feel like one of the things that's interesting right now is we live in a culture where it feels like everything demands a response.
Yeah.
If there's a tragedy that happens, what are we posting about this?
Yeah.
If there's something in politics that happens, what are we posting about this?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where it is, if it's in your city, if it's domestically or internationally.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like everything demands a response right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, from your perspective, having your hand in kind of both worlds, from a church or pastor's response, what do you feel like? Do you feel like that's true? Does everything actually demand a response? Or how should we be thinking about what we talk about on our platforms?
I mean, I think firstly, like I've just learned that, nuance is important. And there's a difference between nuance and ambiguity. Ambiguity is like purposely obfuscating something, like almost just like from a hiding standpoint.
Yeah.
Whereas nuance actually is very courageous. A lot of people would say nuance is a coward's way out, but nuance is honestly more courageous, because instead of acting like every issue is linear, nuance says, no, things are circular and they're, it's chess, not checkers. And I think a lot of times social media, and I would even say the nature of a two-party political system, is trying to train our brain to think that everything is one to one. It's checkers. And I think, so when I think of, that question, I go, so we had a season of church where we kind of pulled back on theology. We pulled back on biblical formation. We pulled away from political conversations.
Yeah.
So I think we had a generation of millennials and even those older, and then even Gen Z, that weren't really trained on how to respond to some of the issues that have happened in the last 10 years. That's true. But what's also true is that, we didn't have social media back then. And I guess what I'm just saying is like, what I don't want to do is just like people pin it on like, seeker sensitive churches are just so dumb and they ruined it. And before seeker sensitive churches, we all had it figured out. I'm like, no, there's a lot going on. And also the world's moving fast. My answer to this question 2 years ago, a little bit different than what it is right now.
Yeah.
And so I literally just posted this on my story this morning. But this is what I said. I said, if I don't post about something, an issue, because sometimes people be like, well, you talked about this, but not that. And I go, if I don't post about it, it's because I don't, feel like I have fully formed thoughts on the issue, and B, I don't know that my fully formed thoughts are going to be beneficial to humans or glorifying to God. And I just think that those are two like filters that I'm like, I don't feel like I need to respond to everything. And I think we need to resist the urge to give unformed thoughts to important topics.
That's great.
That's great. I think of that verse that says like everything is permissible, but is it beneficial?
Yeah.
Like we can post about anything and everything that we want to.
Yeah.
But is this actually beneficial for the people around me and the people that I'm influencing and leading? And to your point, do I have enough nuance to understand what I'm even talking about here?
I think I learned the hard way in San Francisco, pastoring in we're in Franklin now, and it can be a little bit of like this homogenous echo chamber, and you lose the luxury of being culturally insensitive when you move to an urban metropolitan city that's post-Christian and secular like San Francisco. You have to, there's a lot of nuance, but I learned the hard way. I couldn't please anybody.
Yes.
Like it was like during BLM kind of era or whatever, it was like, I didn't say enough as a pastor for the black folks in my church. And then if I said something, the white folks in my church were mad. Then I also had 37% of the population is Asian. Yeah. So they were being like bullied and beat up because of the China virus. So then I didn't say enough there. And so I felt like I was like that little pinball inside of a pinball machine just bouncing around. Yeah. And I finally got to the place where I thought this silence can be misunderstood, but it can't be misquoted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to lead this moment with curiosity rather than forming just these opinions and just kind of throwing them out there. And there were people that misunderstood that, but they couldn't misquote me. And so I was able to form my opinion based on what does the Bible say about this? What have we learned through history with these things? And then be able to form something like you're saying that's a little bit more nuanced. But I think that it's so polarizing now people don't have space for nuance. They just want hashtag statements that just try to capture an entire opinion about something or position about something. And they're usually super offensive or they're just wrong outright, right?
Well, and I think the comment section is the new road rage. And what I mean by that is that traffic.
That's so true. I love watching your comment section. It's just entertainment for me.
I try to engage. You know what's so funny is most of the time I think people don't expect a response.
Yep.
And I found that when people drop something unwise, and I'm talking like pastors.
Yep.
You know, and I just respond with some humanity and a question, all of a sudden the switch up. It's like, and this is why I relate it to traffic and road rage, because there's something about being trapped in traffic. It dehumanizes us. It feels like there's this layer, and it feels like I can say anything. But then it also feels like this safe place to just vent what I should be saying to my boss, what I should be processing with my spouse, what I actually, you know, it's like road rage is like, hey, you feel like less of a man because you don't know how to relate to your son. And instead of flipping someone the bird, you should just take your son out for a weekend and figure it out and ask the Holy Spirit for help, or go to your pastor, you know? And I think it's the same thing with the comment section. Last night I had a pastor just comes in and like disagreed with me. Don't care if you disagree with me. But then he's like, oh yeah, and what are those pants? You need me to buy you some new pants? I'm good with money. You need some new pants. And I'm like, this is a grown man, a senior pastor of a church is coming into a stranger. And the funny thing is it was actually a post challenging people who are very moved by the death of Charlie Kirk to make sure that they're actually doing something with that, not just like we posted and here he comes and is like, yeah, I'm just tired of people being woke people like you. And I'm like, brother, I was actually criticized for being too outspoken in support of Charlie Kirk's legacy. So it's just insanity.
It's such a lose-lose. It feels
and so I just think we've got to pastor ourselves and our people, lead ourselves better around how we respond on that comment, because it can feel like, you know, another dude this morning was like something like you know, again, just I don't know, it was something mocking me. I just go, what Christian person is waking up thinking that they're just going to go mock a person? It's just weird to me, you know? And I'm not saying that like we can't have tough skin. I'm not trying to say that we should all be like, you know, but it just doesn't feel healthy for them. You know? I think it'd be unhealthy if I was like losing sleep over it. I'm not. But I also think it's like, what's going on in their soul?
Are you an executive leader looking to level up? Or are you leading a team that could use a crash course into effective leadership? Our Leadership Masterclass teaches 7 essential leadership skills that you can implement immediately with your team. These are practical, proven strategies to help you lead with clarity and confidence. If you're ready to transform your leadership, sign up today at sidecarleader.com and get started with resources that you can use right away.
There's a scripture I just thought of.
Well, I was curious, do you feel like there's a responsibility that pastors and churches have to post on certain topics?
So,
maybe what are the dangers of not posting about it?
Think about like the big rage for a season was your silence is your violence, you know, and I think that probably has stoked the fire a bit to where, you know, pastors feel like they have to say something. I can't tell you how many pastors, you know, just using the Charlie Kirk thing as an example, they were so stressed out about what they were going to say. And I wasn't even preaching at my church that weekend. So I was like, so I'm like hitting you up. I'm like, good luck, buddy. You know, but anyway, go.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a pastor's responsibility is to help give a biblical framework to the issues of all of life.
Yeah.
However, I don't think social media is the best way to do that.
I was about to say
for every topic.
Yeah.
Now,
for sure.
And so I think that this is why we're feeling the casualty of killing Sunday school. This is why we're feeling the casualty of only making volunteer onboarding the most important thing instead of spiritual formation.
I want to talk about that.
This is good.
This is the casualty of, you know, there's in Franklin there, one of the largest buildings downtown. It's where Generations Church meets right now. It's a big building, 3 stories high, you know, multiple rooms, you know, a sanctuary, you know, it's so big. It was built by the Methodist Church as their Sunday school building.
No way.
Because at that time, RIP Methodist theology. Hey, I know there's a lot of faithful Methodists trying to hang on, but there's also a lot of crap in the Methodist mainline theology right now. But that was just an example of the premium that they put on biblical education and theology. And so I think that I actually think that instead of trying for pastors to be on social media more, I think they need to be in Sunday school, formational. They need to create formational environments for conversations with their people. And that's the thing too, is like pastors are responsible for their sheep, not the algorithm.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say is, as a pastor, if you look at where should I actually talk about this, are you reaching your people by posting it on social media? Or is the best use of your energy, to what your point is, being with your people and talking about it in a circle and in a community?
I think half the things that get said on social media from pastors when it comes to these particular things, it's like optic management.
Yeah.
You know, but I love what you're saying.
A little
Like
PR.
my first responsibility is not to pastor that platform. It's to pastor the actual platform that God's entrusted to me, which is the congregation that you're leading, right? Is how are we deeply forming them, and how are we addressing these nuanced topics biblically as a community? And like, ultimately that is my first responsibility before it is posting anything else. But here's the scripture I was going to tell you. I'm literally preaching this weekend on how to be a faithful witness.
Let's go.
And Colossians 4 says a couple things, the first few verses, but then it says, pray that I may proclaim it clearly, talking about the gospel as I should. Be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. But I think there's so much of that that's missing in the posts that we're seeing, and in the comments. The road rage section it's so graceless, and it's coming from people that are pastors or Christians or whatever, and we wonder why our witness is being diminished among outsiders. It's because it's like my mom used to always tell me, we're the only army that kills our wounded. We just back and forth firing at each other with no grace, with no space for nuance. We just feel like we have to like drop some bomb somewhere, and it's just like, it's not really that helpful.
Well, you just remind her what the Democrats did to Joe Biden. Okay. I think they do that too. It is what we do as humans, and it's kind of sad, but it's like trying to figure out, how do we as leaders, but we should be the ones that are standing by our wounded the most. That's what a Christian should be known for. Is like, you know, and this is where it's like, again, one of my big prayers is like, Lord, help us not overcorrect. And so it's like, for instance, like there's a lot about like Hillsong New York and Carl Lentz vibes that we could use with some of that methodology today. But it's easy to go, oh, well, because, you know, or even like, I think it was like a hymn thing, or like, but like early, like 2010 ministry where it's like, we were all about, we run to the messy, you know? And it's like, well, now I think there's groups of pastors and Christians who are like, well, that's woke. That's bad. That's toxic empathy. And it's like, no. There is such a thing as toxic empathy, but that doesn't mean that there isn't such a thing as healthy empathy, you know? And it's like,
we swing the pendulum.
And we've got to, like, I think we're just in this moment where we're just like, I think we've got to remember as Christians that we have the only thing that not only has stood the test of time, but will stand the test of eternity. And I think we've got to just calm ourselves down, like, and anchor in that. But my challenge would be, let's not say, whenever I've heard historically a pastor say, it doesn't matter who's in the White House because God's on the throne, that's followed by radio silence. And then I'm left to go out into the world and have to fend for myself, show up to church and hear about joining a small group. And so I'm like, we've got to like, I think it's true. We need to have a faith that realizes Christianity's not defined what President Donald Trump says or does. We've outlasted every empire, y'all. And we're going to we're going to be okay.
We're going to be all right.
And he's not our mascot, you know, he's not our primary spokesperson. We're going to be okay. However, we still have to wade into the mess with our people. And I would also say, like, I think it's just a good reminder for us is like, you know, even parables like, you know, he left the 99 to follow the one. I think the one doesn't always mean lost people. I think our job as pastors is to be in the mess. As leaders, Christian leaders, we're in the mess with all people. And it's like, sometimes I feel like we have more grace for the lost person struggling than the Christian who's like can I just get any answers on this theological subject?
Yeah.
No, go volunteer, shut up and serve. You have a bad heart for asking questions. You want deeper theology? And I still see my friends, and I was, Pastor Brian Bullock, who I love in Charlotte, he and I were going back and forth in this in a good way, back and forth, because we do we do Instagram life together. But, he did a post where he was like, everyone wants biblical education, but no one wants biblical living. And I'm like, but how does someone know how to have biblical living without biblical education? Right. But then his point is like, but look at all the people that are biblically educated but don't live out the Bible. And I go, well, don't blame their disobedience on biblical education. And I think this is where it's just like, we got to come together around some of these fundamentals.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about this because I feel like you've already talked about this in a few ways with how do we not overcorrect? How do we not swing the pendulum too forward? You've already mentioned Sunday school and the cost of that, which I love that you're saying that. I remember my first time going to a church and they didn't have Sunday school classes and not understanding it. Because I grew up Bethel Baptist Church in Ardilla, Alabama. Did not understand that. How do you feel like as leaders and pastors, we build towards a future and recognize where we are in a way that doesn't tear down the past?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Maybe I don't know if there's a formation angle you want to bring to that or a creative angle, but.
No, I mean, I just think, I think that there are parts of the global body of Christ that over glorify history. Yeah. Right? Like that still put too high a premium on what a dead guy did 800 years ago, And even right now you hear all these Gen Z guys are apparently becoming Catholic and Orthodox, Every data point I see that actually is not true. The Catholics actually, for every one Gen Z guy they gain, they lose 8 people that were born Catholics. Yeah. So let's not overcorrect and think. And then just a couple months ago, I was in Europe and I'm walking around these beautiful old churches. I'm like, yo, these are so beautiful and we need to give it. And then I'm like, oh, this is empty. This church is empty. Yeah. Or a bar or a museum. Yeah. And so we have to realize that we can't go fully back as if the future is backwards. Yeah. But at the same time, I would say, especially probably in our friendship circles, our evangelical, charismatic world, we have underappreciated tradition and history. And there's been such a premium on being relevant and innovative in church that what's funny is we're actually running away from our number one advantage is that we have timeless truth and eternal validation.
It's great.
And so I'm like, I almost think that the way that the church remains relevant in this ever-changing world of AI and up and down governments is actually in some way staying the same. And not saying stagnant, but staying constant. Anchored. And I just think it's bro, when people come into church, they should get things that the church offers.
Here at Sidecar Leader, we don't just develop content that we hope adds value to you. Our bread and butter is really our coaching. If you're feeling stuck as a leader, whether you're navigating growth, strategic planning, staffing decisions, or tackling your toughest priorities, our one-on-one coaching sessions are here to guide you. Together, we'll identify the strategies and steps that will take your leadership to the next level. It's time to invest in your growth because your vision and your team deserve it. If you're ready to get started, you can visit sidecarleader.com/coaching. We can't wait to work alongside of you.
So that's why I'm just that's why I think we should all probably be thinking more about the sacraments and confession. And even for us to understand, a lot of us, a lot of churches, didn't meet on December 28th. And they didn't, and then there's a lot of people on the internet that are like, oh, why wouldn't they do that? Well, that's because if those people have a high view of the sacraments and the way that a priest distributes them, they're thinking somebody missed a major moment with Jesus that can only happen in a setting like that. And I think that's a good thing for us to wrestle with. I'd say as evangelical charismatics, we're kind of you can meet Jesus anywhere on the road. It's cool, quiet times. And that I think that's true. Yeah. But then the Orthodox and Catholic brothers, they're just but do you realize that God has established still a priesthood to distribute his sacraments in an organized, So I personally think we can actually do all of it. And then I think when church is church, it centers business leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs to go win out there. Yeah. And so sometimes I wonder if in our effort to reach the world, we have not offered a more robust formation for those who actually God has designed to go change the world. Yeah. So if Zuck came to your church, would Mark Zuckerberg actually find true formation and spiritual understanding?
Yeah.
Or would you just try to run him through a volunteer pipeline?
Yeah.
And then at which point would Mark Zuckerberg leave your church?
I have
and
so much to say about this right now. I'm not. No.
Why? We want to know.
No, we were interviewing you. We're having a conversation with you. I do want to throw one bomb out there. Just
what bomb?
Who is Sunday for?
Ooh.
God.
Okay. Next.
I would say that it's important for us to understand when we say church, I think we confuse the church as the global church, as the bride of Christ, and then the gathering on Sunday. And then furthermore, I would say that there's a distinction between what we do at church as in the corporate gathering of the saints, and then who we are as the local expression Monday through Saturday. So I think that the corporate gathering, number one purpose should be to worship God, and then it should be to equip the saints and create a robust community and fulfillment. And then along the way, be ready for people that will convert, be ready for seekers. Yeah. But I think, but part of why I think that is because I also think that the best evangelism happens Monday through Saturday. Yeah. We are right now playing a game where our primary evangelism strategy is marketing enough and crossing our fingers that people might show up to where we are. When I think that historically the church has sent out men and women, equipped them, commissioned them into their daily lives to say, we're not going to hope that someone sees our Instagram ad. Yeah. We are going to send fully formed, healthy Christians into the world. And what I'm excited about is when churches not only can accommodate new people and have excellent services, but when we start to hear more stories about, man, I laid hands on my coworker. Yeah, God used me to heal my coworker at work. And my fear is that we are just so caught up in like first-time guest retention and volunteer assimilation and all these things that we're losing so much. And so to me, I view that through what I see in scripture and church history as the reason, but I also view it strategically of saying, like, if you force yourself as a pastor to know Sundays is to more so facilitate people who are Christians, it would also force you to say, so what's your actual plan to reach and serve your world Monday through Saturday?
That's great.
Yeah, that's so good.
Amen, church.
It's good stuff to wrestle with.
How much of what you're talking about right now is playing a role in the philosophy of ministry that you're doing at Holy Saints?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so my church history is I was a part of a large Assemblies of God church in Rockford, Illinois for 10 years. And then I was a part of Elevation Church in Charlotte, North Carolina for 5 years. So my adult ministry career, pedigree, even just individual church experience has mostly been shaped by a more seeker-sensitive, approach to ministry. And now I'm a part of like 150 person, new church plant, which some things are just different just because it's a church plant. You guys know that world really well. And I think for my wife and I who want to be senior leaders someday of a church, this is like invaluable experience. Because again, it's easy to talk about church. It's easier to talk about church than to do it. But yeah, I would say that part of why I felt God led us there is because there's a philosophy of ministry that, like our senior pastor, Brian, he says we grow at the rate of relationship.
Oh, that's great.
And so
it's a great phrase.
And so an example would be, he's like, if we put out too much meta ads, we are going to outpace the relational equity to which people come. But now it's almost a little bit hard to find our church. Not impossible, but it's a little bit hard. So it means that in order to find it, you had to go ask someone who knew, which also means that when a guest comes, they already know someone, which means that the culture we're trying to create in our church is that it's your job to facilitate the person that came with you. Also, what we're doing with our church is to say, because we're not doing a ton of marketing, if you don't tell your friends about Easter, if you don't share your faith with your friends, they'll never hear it. At least from the realm of our church. I would also say it also helps us embrace a more kingdom-minded approach to the other churches in our area, which is to say, we're not anti that another church might have more of a wider front door philosophy. So we also kind of embrace that. It's like, hey, like if there's a church down the street that is seeing hundreds of first-time guests every week, that also helps us maybe feel even more affirmed to follow how God has asked us to be designed.
Is your team ready to thrive? Do they have the resources and clarity that they need to succeed? In our team coaching sessions, we provide the tools and principles needed to drive health and growth, and most importantly, clarity in your organization. We believe that clarity brings the confidence to lead effectively. So many times we're too close to the problems to see them correctly. And through coaching, we're able to bring objectivity and no emotional attachment to help you see your organization clearly. Together, we'll develop a strategic path that empowers your team to implement best practices and take on new challenges with confidence. Let's unlock your team's potential. Want to learn more? Head over to sidecarleader.com/coaching and let's talk about your goals and how we can help you accomplish them.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that is where your mind is at, knowing your background and I'll even say expertise in social media and engaging in that way. And the fact that you're not using that as a tool in the philosophy that you have in ministry, I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
To me.
Well,
and I think it's amazing.
It's a tension. I've also though, and I think anyone who's been in ministry for a bit has seen this, is like, I realized, I don't know, probably like the first time I did an event, this was in youth ministry. I had 1,000 kids show up, and
you're like, winning.
Yeah, we won. And then like most of them didn't come back.
Yeah.
And then you have a conference that blows up and pops off and is cool. And then you realize that a lot of the kids that you were their youth pastor for 6 years don't follow Jesus anymore.
Yeah. You have to face that reality.
And I'm not driven by a trend. I'm not driven by a fad. I'm not driven by being contrarian. I'm not driven to be anti anything. I'm just going, I know people are going to walk away. And I know that like we plant, and someone else waters, but God causes the growth.
Yeah.
And Jesus lays out the soil conditions. And I really do believe more in that people do have, free will in the midst of it all. But I also think that I'm like, man, like I'm tired of celebrating first-time conversions while so many people keep leaving the back door.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's got to be a way we can do both a little bit better. Jesus lost 1 of 12.
Pretty solid.
That's pretty solid retention metrics.
Yeah.
And guess what? He had multiple options to replace that dude right away. Matthias was not just some like, for a lot of us, we're like, when one of our top leaders drop, we've all had that conversation and volunteer. You're like,
roll the dice on the next guy.
Can Stacy do it?
Yeah.
Maybe, but she's not like Stephanie, and you're like, well, but no, Jesus, I think an underrated element of Jesus was his leadership team. Also, I think an underrated element of Jesus was how much time he put into it.
Yeah.
3 years. I was just doing a study on Daniel chapter 1. When Daniel and his boys were captured and exiled to Babylon, the leadership training program that the emperor put them in was a 3-year program. And I think there's some correlation there that I'm studying. How many years did Jesus spend on earth with his disciples? 3 years. If you do the math, it's likely that the waking hours time that Jesus spent with his guys, that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have been put through, was 10,000 plus hours. Mm-hmm. And everyone kind of in our, we kind of know what that means, mastery. And I'm just like, bro, we do not have a 10,000 hour approach to leadership development in our church. We have
just formation.
Or formations. But then you see that because Jesus did that for 3 years, that's how at Pentecost, they grew to 3,000.
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm not anti-big church. I think it's biblical. You can't, man, if you don't, like I sell it, and I talk about this all the time. Like when I see what God does through Elevation Nights, what I see what God is doing at Church of the Highlands, what I see what God is doing through YouVersion reaching 2 billion people and Life Church being almost to 50 locations. And I think God, you don't have to be big to be good. I think we've learned that. But also I think that God does want to see a large and expansive church.
Yeah.
But I think the pathway to that and to do it sustainably is we've got to have more of a mastery approach to formations versus assimilation.
Yeah.
What does that look like practically, you think, for pastors? If they're listening to this, they're like, okay, I hear what you're saying, John. What's my next step?
I think that's some stuff. That is some methodology that we can actually pull from church history.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that older dead dudes and denominations have historically done.
That needs to be your next book, Older Dead Dudes.
Older Dead Dudes. That have just said, even Tim Keller's church planning method, to plan a church with Tim Keller, one of the steps was that you had to live in the city and work a normal job for a year.
Yeah.
Even
great.
that
That's awesome.
pushes back against. And this is also the thing is I have realized what my talent can do without God.
Yeah.
And that actually scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen other people do it. And so a lot of people are scared of what they might not be able to accomplish.
Yeah.
But I think when you really start to get smart, you actually get more scared of what you could accomplish without God's help.
Yeah.
And I think that's where some of these modern business practices infused into the church can be dangerous because we don't ask the question, should we do it? We just ask the question, can we?
Yeah.
And I think that as people of faith and what the church is, we need to be the number one people that say, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it.
Yeah.
As technology continues to skyrocket with AI and gene splicing and the different ways babies are going to be able to be born and all this crazy stuff, a number one question of the human race will not be, can we? The question is going to be, should we?
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to really get ahead of that question.
It's all the way back to what we said at the beginning. All things are permissible, but is this actually beneficial for what we're trying to do here?
What if your team had a clear roadmap for the next 12 months on what was most important, complete with objectives, key metrics, owners, and deadlines? And not only that, but also the accountability to see the plan through. Through our team planning offsites, we're able to help you unlock and identify where you are, where you want to go, and how to get there. With a focus on goals, key metrics, and actionable strategies, we'll build a plan that keeps you on track all year and provide the accountability to ensure that you execute what you planned. If you plan your work and you work your plan will work if it's a good plan. If you're ready to set up your team for success, clarity, and a clear roadmap moving forward, you can go to sidecarleader.com/coaching and let's make your vision a reality.
You know, another hyper practical thing from a non-dead leader is like John Mark Comer said this in a some YouTube thing. I don't know if it's his YouTube thing or not. But he said my fear for pastors today is not whether they have vision for their church. It's whether they have vision for the individuals themselves. Yeah. And a practical challenge he gave, which I think this is really good for all of us. He goes, put a list out of your 100 most committed church attendees. And maybe that number could be 10, it could be 20. He comes from a larger church background. But he goes, what's your personal vision statement for what God wants to do in their lives?
Wow. And
that just freaking like makes me want to cry, because that's tough and that's slow and that's But then it's like beautiful. Yeah. And they were like, well, you can't put that on a spreadsheet. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of the point, but like,
I don't think we're supposed to.
We should try, So I just think back to so many times where like, when one of my like core people was going through something, my response was, well, you just don't get what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
We're trying to reach the lost, you stupid Christian. And I don't think we mean to do that, but I think there's some of our systems that create that culture. In the name of reaching the lost, we must trample the found. Yeah. And I don't think that's the way of Jesus.
You know what I think is so fascinating about early church, and I know that Acts 2:42-47 is not necessarily this blueprint.
Yeah.
But what I think is so fascinating is they devoted themselves, and then you see this series of things they were devoted to, this community. And the natural outcome of that was that outsiders were attracted to come and be a part of it, right? That these people devoted themselves to being deeply formed by prayer, by worship, by the Eucharist, by gathering together to eat in each other's homes. God was moving and working in their midst. And then naturally, outsiders were drawn into it. Yeah. And I think we keep going back to that even as a church, because as you know, when you're a church plant and you are 150 people, you're like, when I show up at another conference, someone says, how's the church going?
Yeah. What they mean is.
Yeah. What's the numbers, baby?
Yeah.
And so if we're not careful, we have the wrong scorecard.
Yes.
And so it's like, how do we get back to having the right scorecard? And I hate to even say scorecard, but I think what you just said, like getting a vision for that individual's life. Because the reality is like you could ask any senior pastor, tell me your vision statement, whatever, and they're going to paint this big vision statement. But the reality is people in your church, they don't care about your vision statement. Yeah. They care about their vision for their life. They care about themselves.
Yeah.
And so to to the degree that you can say, this is, the vision God's called us to be as a church, but lay that aside and get a good biblical vision and a picture of what could it look like if God's moving in this person's life and they're becoming more and more like Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, man.
When Jesus is telling Peter to feed his sheep, he's literally feeding Peter. And it's just there's so many examples of how Jesus's pathway to reach the lost was by being the best friend, father, and meeting their needs. And I think that's the way of the Christian leader is like, we are going to. And it's, again, we already have some of the foundations for this, John Maxwell, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. You got to invest into it. But like, that's like, it's not manipulative. It's being a good shepherd.
Yeah.
And I also think systems are not the enemy to spiritual formation. I feel like you probably can't do spiritual formation well without systems. Yeah. So systems are not the problem. It's just that we have only or primarily built systems based around certain metrics.
Yeah.
And so an example would be like, if you think of a shepherd, I've never been a shepherd to sheep, but I imagine that both in an ancient way, but also now, they have data on what flock A is eating and what the grass conditions are. They probably have also highlighted a couple sheep that are pregnant or in need or old or young and it's like, we got to get some of that back where we obsess a little bit more over the sheep God has given us versus the sheep that we don't have yet.
Yeah, that's so good.
I saw this the other day. I don't know if this is accurate. I don't know if this is scholarly work or some, junior high kid spit this out, but it was talking about if you were to look at the ministry of Jesus that we have recorded in the Gospels and you were to break down all the scenes. Did you see this?
Pastor Ian at Bridge Church posted this.
I don't know who came up with this, but it says,
well, he did it on chat, but he posted it.
So conflict with religious leaders, 12 moments in the ministry of Jesus, which was 10% of what we have recorded.
Yeah.
Traveling, calling disciples while he was on his way, 14 different scenes, 12% of his ministry. Healings, miracles, and deliverances, 19 different moments in the gospel, 17% of his ministry. Public teaching, sermons to crowds, 21 scenes, 18% of his ministry. Meals, tables, homes, hospitality, and settings where they were eating, 49 scenes, 43% of his ministry.
Yeah.
43%.
Yeah.
There it is.
There's a little ministry philosophy for you right there.
Yeah, that's
100%.
great. Well, man, this has been great. I feel like we got to two of our questions, but this was such a richer conversation.
Let me give one practical.
We were expecting.
One more practical thing is that I think it meets your earlier question and this question is that as a pastor, instead of posting about whatever you want to post about, send out a Zoom link to your church. Because if you're going to put out some wild thought to the algorithm, why not do it in some form of conversation with some layer of leadership? Maybe it's not your whole church. And I just think that in the age of the internet, people shouldn't have to go to Joe Rogan to get their worldview.
Yeah.
And wherever the church is silent, social media will be loud.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we have to answer every cultural moment, but I think it should be our endeavor to teach people the Bible in a way that they have an answer to every question.
It's great.
And so I think that can even happen digitally. We had, because of this crazy ice storm we had down here, we're in the midst of our first round of membership, and we had to go on Zoom because of the snow. We had it was week 3, week 1 and 2, we were in a room and we were doing Q&A time. Almost no one asked questions, which there's an art to getting people to ask questions in a room. Right. But then as soon as we opened up Q&A on the Zoom,
all these questions.
And so I just want to even point out how technology is also not the ultimate enemy. The apparatus, the apparatus is not the problem. Leonard Sweet, right? That's the theologian dude. I think it's him. Leonard Sweet. He said when a Christian is faced with technology, we should not be fighting over its method. We should be fighting over its soul.
Yeah.
And it's
great.
We don't a shovel does not have inherent morality.
Yeah.
It's what we teach people to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think that technology at a high level can be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so I just wanted to get, when you were talking on that first question, I was like, I just want to encourage some pastors.
Yeah.
And for some pastors or some leaders, the first step with that might be you just doing that with your staff.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of your staff would love to hear how you think.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe you roll it out that way. And then maybe what you can also do is model for your staff and your team different ways to handle some of these conversations and all of that. So we don't have to meet every cultural moment. When we do, I don't even think social media is always the best place to do it. And then, but then long-term, big picture, if we don't teach them how to see the world biblically, who is?
Who is?
Yeah. That's our job.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Man. John, thank you so much.
Thanks
bro.
for having me on,
man.
you guys.
Listen, we're in the same city.
I know.
And we need to go eat at some of these great restaurants.
We're going to
Not
go to
Franklin,
Turkey and
but
the Wolf together.
Let's go.
All right, man. Love you so much.
Thank y'all.